Hey guys, this is Kelly Hogaboom. I am on screen. Okay. I'm just gonna check my mic level really quick and make sure it's good, and then I'm gonna put up the list of things that we're gonna need to do our homework. So, a lot of people popping in here aren't going to be sewing with me. They're just going to be saying hi, and that's cool. But I'm recording this video for the people who are taking the class and who are sewing a dress with me next Friday. So I will be back in just a minute. Okay. Um, why did I check? Why did I check my mic when I wasn't prepared to actually fix it? I don't actually know how. Um, shoot. And look at what I did. Okay. There we go. Okay, so welcome here, especially my would-be students. Um, we are making a dress together in a week. So if you pop on here and you suddenly realize that you have to do that, I want to tell you there's still time because the pattern that we're using you can buy like right now online, and you can go to a quilt shop or like even Walmart or Joann's to get your fabrics. So it's actually a pretty simple dress. And with my Seems Legit sewing class every month, each month the project gets not necessarily more complicated, but it might take a little longer. So this is the homework that we're doing to get ready for sewing together on Friday. And I feel nervous without being able to see who's here in the stream. So bear with me as I pull that up on my phone. My phone, which has 8% battery. I'm super prepared today. Um, yeah. So this is like, if any of you are thinking, wow, Kelly gets so much done. She's so busy. She's a dynamo. Yeah, I am completely overworked right now at this stage of my life. But part of that is getting prepared to take a little vacation. So I am here for that. And without any further ado, I'm going to start showing us what we're up to today. So we are taking our dress pattern. Okay, so I'm going to start laying out my pattern pieces. This is like a really simple pattern. There are literally 4 pieces to it. And you all saw the diagram. Let me pull up the diagram again of the dress. You can just sort of see the basics. So yeah, you'll see that that was, it has like a bunch of pleats in the skirt. These are the pleats here. Don't be intimidated. I know that looks like a lot of lines. So this is the back of the skirt, and this is the front. And this is the bodice, which has little tucks in it, which are, so this is the center. So normally the center bodice would be a straight line, but it has these tucks. And this is the back. That's it, 4 pieces. Now we're gonna make some more pieces today. That's part of our homework. But so we wanna have all of our pieces of the pattern so far. We've got that today. And again, in my link, you can find a link to the pattern, and you get to take your own measurements and print the pattern out, and it will fit your body, which is pretty amazing if you ask me. Just takes all of those little fit issues out of it. So here is the other thing that we're going to need today is we're going to need tracing equipment. So I use a lot of just plain carbon paper. Many years ago, a friend of mine gave me massive stacks of carbon paper, and I've never had to buy any. Tracing wheel, I bet some of you have seen these in a thrift shop. And then just paper. The paper we're going to use here is mostly to make facings and to make pockets, because dresses need pockets. So we need our tracing. So we need that. And then we need the fabric. Look at this. This is my friend's. I'm making her a dress on, so Friday, the dress I'm making will be for her. And the pattern, or the camera kind of bleaches it out. So it's pretty deep teal. Look at that. Ooh. Isn't that pretty? And it's got these little unicorns on it. So, yeah. Very beautiful. And this is a cotton lawn. So it's lighter than a quilting cotton. Hold on just a sec. And then the last thing that we're going to need is interfacing. So interfacing is, it's a fabric. It looks like a fabric. This is obviously black. If you're making a pale dress, you would want to use, a white interfacing. Interfacing generally comes in black, white, and off-white. And it's basically a type of fabric. In this case, this is a, I don't know, mid-weight. And it's got glue on one side, okay? So that glue we use to fuse to the wrong side of the garment. And it's what we give structure, basically, structure and sometimes thickness. So we will use the interfacing in the facings that we're going to draft, but also we're going to be using it where we apply our zipper. In the original pattern, there's a side zipper indicated, but we're going to use the back invisible zipper, okay? So we're not going to mess with the zipper today, but let me show you an invisible zipper. And this one is the wrong color because this is a different project. But invisible zippers, super easy to find. You can find these at Walmart, Joann's. You want about an 18-inch zipper. Oh, I'll never get used to the direction of this camera. This one's white for a different dress that I'm making. But you can find them in all colors, okay? And if you have just a regular zipper, you know what, that's okay. But if you want to follow what I'm doing, you're going to get yourself an invisible zipper. Okay, so what are we doing today? We are drafting our facings. Facings are the way that I remember what facings mean is they're parts of the garment that face your body. So you've got this bodice here, and if you don't find a way to finish the arm side here and the neckline, this is the back neckline and the other arm side, you need to figure out a way to finish that, and you can't just kind of fold it over. Having said that, before we start, I actually did I think I posted this a couple weeks ago. I did make this dress in a gauze, and I did fold it over. So this is where the facing would be, and I've done this incredibly delicate seam. That is an advanced technique. I do have a tutorial on how to do that. But what I'm going to be showing you is a true facing, and so that means that it actually is like a strip of fabric that goes all the way alongside inside this neckline, and it makes a nice finish on the outside. Most patterns come with facing paper facing pattern pieces, and this one doesn't. I don't know why. So we're going to make them, and hopefully that will kind of like lift the mystery of what a facing is all about. But yeah, let me just double check over here. Okay, I have people popping in and out. Hello. Feel free to type any questions you have about mine. Don't be inappropriate. Tim, if you're on. Okay, so our first thing we're gonna make are the facings. Okay. I don't know if you guys saw the Sailor Moon costume. I just posted a couple, like I don't know, an hour ago, but I definitely drafted my own facing for that. Okay, so here's what we're gonna do for the neckline. Right here, here and here, we're going to draft a typical facing. For the arm thigh, we're going to actually use a bias strip for facing it, okay? Because we can do whatever we want. So if you're watching this later, it's, you know, you can ask me questions if you get confused, but basically let's do the front facing first, okay? So I'm going to take my paper. This is the paper that I'm going to be drafting the pattern piece. I just keep these scraps all the time. I'm going to put my carbon paper face down on top of the paper and put my pattern piece right here. So this whole section is where I'm going to draw a facing and make sure that there's enough paper and enough tracing medium in between, okay? And I'm going to be good and I'm going to actually pin it, but I don't normally. I'm going to show good form. There's like this fine line between me kind of whipping through this and me doing what I think a beginner needs to do or might benefit from doing. But anyway, I'm going to pin it. Okay, so all of that's pinned together now. Okay. And I am going to, I'm going to draw my facing line. Okay. So, like I said, the facing is a strip that basically mirrors this neckline edge. And so I have to decide how wide it is. And I actually, you'll notice on retail dresses, the facing sometimes goes all the way and extends into the shoulder seam. And so I'm kind of right this minute debating, and I think I am going to do that. And that means we'll be applying the neckline facing before we put the arm thigh in. So what that means is I'm going to take my little ruler here, and that is about a, I don't know, 2 1/4 depth of facing. So I'm going to, see, this is why I don't want to pin. I'm going to measure 2 1/4 from this raw edge. Let's do 2. I'm going to measure 2 inch. So if you have this exact pattern, go ahead and measure 2 inches in, and just like super, super lightweight chicken scratches here. Okay. So I'm just doing these little marks. I'm holding, this is great actually. I'm holding the, what is my point? Oh yeah, I'm holding the measurement here tangential to the curve. Y'all remember what tangential means? So I'm gonna have this like super, super soft curve. And you can make a million marks and that will make your curve smoother. I'm pretty good at hand drawing a curve, so that's what I've done here. So I have, it's kind of hard to see, so let me darken it here. And I'm actually, it's funny, I'm cutting all of this out for a friend so that she doesn't have to do this homework part because I'm doing it for her. So, you see that? It's just 2 inches away from this raw edge. Okay, that's it. I don't even need to draw a grain line because the grain line is, we're going to use this vertical line, this fold, okay? So I can stick it back on here and, pin. You need about, if you are a pinner, where did I lost the other pin? See, that's why pin stuck. If you are a pinner, you want to do 2 pins to make it pretty secure. And then this part's so fun. I'm just going to trace the line I just drew. Try to make one nice smooth curve, okay? And then I'm going to trace the raw edge, not the seam line, of the rest of the pattern, okay? And you know what? This is a facing. This goes on the inside of the dress. If it's not perfect, it is not that big a deal. If this curve here is not perfect, who cares? Okay, so you might be asking yourself, well, why is there a seam allowance here, in here, on the center front and on the neckline, but not here? But that's because this is not a seam line. This is the edge of the facing that hangs in the dress. So we're going to finish that whatever way we like. So there's my front facing. Ugh, my lighting. Okay, I'm going to be a good girl and blacken it up so that you can see it. Get a nice little Sharpie. Where did my, oh, there it is. Okay. So I don't like to do this because it looks so nice the way it is. And it's just such a simple, small piece. And one of the reasons I'm drafting a true facing for the front and for the back neckline is because it's super common to have one. So there, you can see the piece pretty good actually. So that's my facing. I'll go ahead and put a little fold line here because, sorry, that's not a fold line, guys. If you look, I traced it right off of here. So actually the fold line would be this line. So that's 3/8 of an inch in. Sorry about that. Let me cut that out. So yeah, I want to show you guys this facing because this is common for dresses to have a facing. But I want to show you the bias finish for the armholes. This is a sleeveless dress because that technique is really nice. It's simple, it's kind of casual, but you won't have to like iron your facings every time you launder the dress. So that's why I wanted to do both. So let me show you our finished result. So again, because I'm going to be cutting this facing out on the fold on this edge, that's why I could remove that seam allowance there. Okay, so that's my front facing, my front piece. So we're just going to do the same thing with the back neckline facing. Sorry if I crumple super loud right here. And then we're going to make pocket pieces, and then I'm just going to go ahead and cut out my fabrics here today to help you guys do that. So same exact technique for the back. Thank you. Okay, I'm back. All right, so back facing, it looks almost the same, but there you won't see those pleats at the center. This is the center back. This is where our zipper is going to go. But for the sake of a facing, we don't care. We're definitely not going to cut it on the fold, because think about that. If you have a facing that's one complete piece, you wouldn't have a place for the zipper to open here. So that's why we can cut the front facing on a fold, because there's no zipper in the front. But on the back, we better not do that. Okay. So I'm going to take another piece of paper and place it under. And remember, I'm only going about 2 inches down, so I don't need a lot of paper there. And I'm saving this piece of paper for the pocket piece. Oh, right. So let me trace my little 2 inches. So this is important-ish. Do you remember how I said our front facing, we went 2 inches from this raw edge here? Well, you better make sure that your back facing is also 2 inches, because those two join right there, just like the front and back bodice do. So otherwise, we'll just go ahead and mark our 2 inches. So again, 2 inches from the raw edge. We're kind of ignoring the seam lines when we draft these facings. And you gotta start getting comfortable with knowing the difference between the seam lines and the cutting lines. And knowing, that's a pretty significant difference. Okay, so here I am. I'm about to trace, just like with the last one. So again, I trace the cutting line here, and I do want to keep a seam allowance on the center back of the facing. And same thing, we're just going to use this for the grain line for the facing piece. So I'm not going to trace that again. It's to make it darker for you guys. It's the same exact principle as the front. I'm going to cut this out. That's literally it. I've got my facing pieces. We're going to set those aside, because what we're going to do when we cut, we're going to cut out all of our fabric pieces, right? Front bodice, back bodice, front of the skirt, back of the skirt. And then we're going to interface a piece of fabric to cut our facings. Because interfacing your facings, in other words, adding a little bit of structure, is generally a good idea. I don't always do it. Again, the dress I just showed you, the sheer dress, there's like nothing there. It's like a whisper thin hem. But for most dresses, you want a little bit stable of a facing. That's why you interface it. Okay, before we move on to the pocket, no, let's do the pocket now. We'll do the pocket. So just take your front or your back, it does not matter. Okay, hang on real quick. I'm gonna type something to my partner. You guys can pop in with a question about, it doesn't even have to be about this project. It's totally fine. I'm getting pretty used to talking and doing these tutorials at the same time. Okay, so front and back, they look almost identical, really, but they are slightly different. The fold, that's the center of the skirt. Okay, so let me pull up the diagram. So when I pull up the diagram, I want you to look at the middle of the skirt. So the middle of the skirt doesn't have a seam. Okay, and in this version, the back doesn't have a seam, the back center, because in the version that the pattern gives you, we're supposedly putting in a side zipper. But we're not going to do that. We're going to put in a center back zipper. There's a lot of reasons for that. And plot twist, we are going to have a seam in the center front and the center back. And I will explain why in a minute. But for now, take either your front or your back, does not matter. And on this is going to be the grain that we're going to cut along, okay? So this is the side. We've got a little notch here. We're going to just freehand draw a pocket piece there, okay? And the way to do that, I like my pocket piece to be like just like a couple inches down from the waist. So that's like literally like 2 inches down from the waist, stitching line, 2 inches down from the waist stitching line. I stick my hand there, okay, hand width. So I've got these 2 hash marks for my width, okay, right below the notch, 2 inches down from that stitching line. And I'm just gonna draw like a kidney shape. Okay. Yeah, that's big. That's great. I know that not everyone has my like freehand skills, so take your time, draw your kidney. I I don't know why, but I like love freehand sketching. Okay, so I drew my kidney. Super simple, big enough for my hand, couple inches down from the waist. Simple, simple. Where's the grain line for this homie? Okay, that's kind of a cool question. Um, and I bet there's some expert out there that has a strong opinion. But I am going to put the grain line parallel to the piece grain line. Okay, like this. So if someone ever comes along and says that's trash, okay. The other thing to do before we move on and make the pocket is go ahead and take the other piece so that you'll see that this is where they match up. It's pretty self-explanatory, and you just want to mark those same pocket placement marks. You don't have to draw the pocket again because we're going to mark the dress so that we know where to put the pocket so that it lines up. So again, those are on the side seam, okay? So now we're going to trace the actual pocket piece. So I love just getting tagged in these pocket memes. I don't love it. Stop doing it. But it's pretty easy to add pockets to dresses. Obviously, there are some exceptions to that. Like the dress that I just showed you guys, the sheer one, I didn't put pockets in it. It's a sheer dress. It weighs nothing. Okay, so I'm going to put my scrap paper down. I'm going to put my tracing medium over and make sure, again, that I have enough, paper and tracing medium. And I'm going to, again, I'm going to trace the cutting line here on that side seam. Ignore the notch because the pocket placement marks are our new notch. I'm going to trace my kidney, and again, you want as smooth line as possible. Whoops. Yeah, that was a crappy technique. And then don't forget your grain line. Okay. So here's my pocket piece. Sorry for like lighting problem again. It's an interesting issue that happens where my overhead lights sometimes are just dim. I haven't figured it out. Okay, but I'm going to cut the piece out, and that way you'll see the shape. We're almost done with all of our little paper prep. And, while I'm just sitting here chatting, I bought this pattern because it's $3.50 or something. It's not only inexpensive, it's literally made to your measurement. So if you're flat chested or have a full tummy or a big butt, this pattern has accommodated for that. And that's one reason I like to use Bootstrap and La Cala and Taylor Nova. But when it comes to being a beginner, there are some just awesome pattern companies that are like the pattern itself includes every possible diagram and instruction you can imagine. This is like the opposite of that. This is like bare bones, and that's what I'm here for. Is I'm trying to demystify what's happening with all these pattern pieces. Okay, so there's our pocket. Look at that. Okay. Well, okay. Last thing we're going to do is we're going to add a seam to the center back and the center front. So I apologize, I did not tell you that you would need tape, but you will need tape. The adding the seam is because this piece is kind of wide because there's so many pleats in it. And you're going to have a hard time getting it out of your fabric. And I'll show you what I mean in a second. But for now, just take a strip of paper and tape it, you know, at least so that there's like at least an inch of room or so. This is super easy. I'm going so fast, I know I'm just going to screw up. But here's what I'm talking about. This skirt, I'm measuring it on my, it's about 30 inches, this skirt piece. So if I was cutting this on the fold, I would need a 60-inch wide width of fabric, and that's not something that you find in woven fabrics. So you've got to kind of Franken piece the skirt front and the skirt back. I have Franken pieced it from the pleats, and that's just fine. There's actually reasons to do that, but we're going to do the simplest method, which is just to make a seam right here. So this pattern has a 3/8 of an inch seam allowance, so we're just going to emulate that here at the center back. This is the center back. So I'm just going to place my ruler 3/8 of an inch away from that fold line, and that's it. And this is pretty essential, so go ahead and cross out fold. This is pretty essential for the back, especially because we need a zipper there. Okay. There we go. Look at that. It looks awesome. Okay, so we're already there for the back, and we're just going to do the same thing to the front. We're just adding a seam at the center front. And then we're going to have all of our paper prepared, and then we're going to start cutting our fabric out. Which, like I said, I'm just loving how pretty this fabric is that my friend chose. And lawn and voile and batiste, these like kind of crisp but very lightweight, often cotton fabrics are just so nice to work with. One of the things I love about what I do is, you know, one day I'm like fighting with satin, like yes, last night I was fighting with satin, and you know, just when I'm like pretty much done having a good time, I get to mess with some like easy crisp cotton lawn. And that's so cool. Okay, same thing. I place the tape along this fold, and I'm adding a 3/8 inch seam allowance. So if you're taking this little class, not in real time, and you get to this part and you are like, Kelly, you're going too fast, please just DM me. Just get a hold of me. Pause the video. Say, what are you doing and why? That said, you know, these lessons are meant to be cumulative, and if you have taken them in order, you're probably not going to be lost. Okay, so here we go. We've messed with all of our paper. Now we're getting to the fun part. We get to fondle our fabric. So I'm going to move all my stuff. I'm going to put some of it away. I'm going to hang up my scissors, my paper scissors. Yeah, stop tagging me in those memes too about your family using your fabric scissors on paper. My family would never do that to me. Okay. So anytime you're working with linen, cotton, like any natural fiber, rayon, you want to wash and dry it and press it, because otherwise it will shrink. Pretty much the only exception to that is like a lot of quilters don't pre-wash their quilting fabric, because you quilt the heck out of it, and then when you wash it, it kind of like shrinks in this vintage way. So here's what I'm talking about. If we hadn't modified this pattern piece, it's too wide. And you can cut it on the cross grain, but not in this case, because these unicorns need to face the same direction. They can't be like laying down on the side. So that's why we did that. And and I can't even, you have to be a little mindful here, because I can't even cut the skirt out by folding it up like this. I've got to do it one piece at a time, because I have to be mindful of the directions the unicorns face. So hopefully you picked out a fabric that has no nap, has no direction, but I did not. So I'm going to cut out two. This is my front. I'm going to cut out two of these, okay? And again, the grain line here. See, I'm going to turn this. So again, I'm going to be careful, because I'll get the yak and I'll screw it up, and I don't want to, because screwing it up is wasteful. Okay, so to get as much of this piece on as I can for you guys. So I'm going to flip the pattern piece over and cut what will be the, this is the front? Okay, yeah. This will be the left front. I'm sorry, right front, because here's the waist right here, center front, and the fabric is face down. And remember, I did remind you all that I'm doing all of my cutting with my rotary. And where is my rotary cutter? This is kind of cool. You might have noticed that there's these weird like waves here in the bottom of the pleat, that it's not a smooth curve. And I will talk to you about that in a minute. But for now, go ahead and use your pattern weights if you like, if you're not cool like me. And so obviously I'm super accurate, and that's why I don't need my weights. And I'm going to be, this is kind of a pain in the ass project actually, because we have to take these skirt pieces kind of one at a time, but you know what, it's going to be a gorgeous dress. Then I've got to do the center front. Okay, I should have changed my my rotary cutter, but it's actually pretty sharp. But you want it really sharp for stuff like this. Okay, so let's talk about what notches I need to cut, okay? So I'm going to flip this. Okay. That's the way I cut it. And the first thing we want to do is cut our pocket notches right here. So we have a 3/8 of an inch seam allowance. So that means, you know, don't cut more than about 1/8 of an inch in. And if you're not sure that you can cut that accurately, because you need sharp scissors and you need to be accurate, then just mark it with chalk or with thread, okay? So cut your little pocket notches. And then look at all these pleats, man. But what I will tell you is that this is going to fold over to this, it's going to fold over to this. Actually, you know what? I have to look at it. I'm just saying you don't have to 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 9. So you actually don't have to cut every single one of these, but you do need to cut a few of them. So instead of being tricky, I am going to cut all of them. Cut them just that 1/8 of an inch. And when we get to where and make sure you're not just cutting the paper, cut the actual fabric. When we get to where we're folding the pleats, you'll see that some of these are not necessary. But just because I kind of feel like with 9 pleat marks, someone who's not used to pleats would be confused or possibly cut the wrong ones here. So cut all 9. Okay. So you've got these tiny, tiny cuts. Okay. So here's another thing I like to do. This front piece looks a lot like the back piece. And we want to avoid getting mixed up, okay? So one trick I have, one of my mentors, well, he doesn't know he's my mentor. One of the guys I stalk on Instagram, he says to mark things as if you have amnesia. So this is the front. This is the front piece, and what I like to do is actually take a safety pin and mark my fronts. So I've got 2 skirt fronts and 2 skirt backs. I'm just going to put a safety pin in the front. And because I always put safety pins in the front, like I never change my mind, that will help me later. So we can actually move this aside because we're going to use the actual fabric to cut out the second piece. And there's totally a reason for that. If you have the pattern piece flipped the wrong way, then you could cut out 2, left fronts, and we just don't want to do that. So I've got this is where you have to be very careful, okay? So I'm going to lay out another length of this fabric, this gorgeous fabric, and I'm just going to place wrong sides together and right side up, no upside down unicorns are resulting in this. Oh my gosh, this fabric is so beautiful. And again, I know that this is the straight of grain here. And with skirt pieces, you can kind of tell because you can sort of see that lines up with the motif. And if your motif isn't sort of linear, you can see because it lines up with the actual weave of the fabric. So I'm going to take my time and actually put that on there pretty good. But I'm going to make sure that it's on the right grain. And there you go. Great. And make sure everything's pretty flat. Okay, I know you can't see the whole piece, but you don't need to. I'll show you here. Going right to that edge there. Okay. One nice thing about this cotton, as opposed to if I was messing with satin, it really kind of sticks to itself. Thank you. And I need to make sure that my mat is underneath everything, that everything's super flat. I'm going to come over here and really check that grain is straight. If your grain's a little bit off, I don't know, not the end of the world, but it's not going to look great. So it's kind of a big piece, so I really have to be very cautious that it's being supported by my cutting mat. But once I have it, now this is really not going to move while I cut, and this is all about that accuracy. Okay. And if you think about it, this seam that I'm cutting right now that you can't see, this cutting line, sorry, those are going to go together. In fact, that'll probably be one of the first things we sew is the center front and the center back of the skirt. So here I come. I'm almost wanting to use these little scraps to make like a pot holder or something. This is a really pretty blue. Okay, so once I've got that, super accurate, okay, I'm going to once again, I'm going to find my little pocket snips, which, come on, where are they? There they are. And I'm going to transfer them so that it's just so symmetrical, guys. So remember, there's 9 of these little homies. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. I found them all. Okay, that's it. Last thing I'll do is I'll take another safety pin to this front just in case they get separated. This dress is gonna be so like lightweight and just gorgeous. So those are my fronts. So to reiterate, instead of a fold here, we have a seam because our fabric wasn't wide enough. We have 9 pleat marks cut at a 1/8 of an inch notch around this top waist seam, and we have our little tiny 1/8 of an inch pocket mark. So I'm going to take this, and our fronts are marked with the safety pin. So make sure you've got that, and if you don't have it, rewind, pause the video. Okay, so I'm going to move that aside, and I'm actually going to take a break from skirt to mess with the bodice here for a minute. Yeah, so I do not, let me make sure there's no perverts on my Twitch stream. Does that happen? Okay. Well, if they are perverts, they're silent. That's good. All right, so here we go. Here we are with the bodice, okay? So at this stage, we have these kind of remnants because we're cutting out these kind of large skirt pieces. Now, pattern, what am I trying to say here? So pattern layouts are not included in this pattern. That means we have to figure it out. I have experience which makes me pretty efficient. I'm usually more efficient than the actual pattern layouts given in commercial patterns. But that's just one of those things where experience will help you. So what I'm wanting to do now is I'm trying to see if I can get my facings out of here. And I can actually. So I am just folding one of these strips along the grain and double checking that I can get. So again, that's the grain line there. See, like that? The grain line is this strip, not this one. So I'm just seeing if I've got enough for my facings. And I do. I gotta keep messing with it a little bit. The reason I'm checking this out is because I'm going to actually interface this like chunk right here. Okay? Not right this second, but I'm going to put that aside. So it's kind of an efficient use of yardage. Facings are annoying, right? Because look at that. Look at that's a lot of yardage wasted. So those are my facings. The front facing here is cut on a fold. Okay. And the back facing is cut in 2 separate pieces. Okay. The reason I'm kind of separating this out is I'm actually going to interface this whole section and then cut out my facings. That's called block fusing, and there are times it's appropriate, there are times that are not. It'll work just fine for this, and I kind of like it more than cutting out a little tiny interfacing piece and fusing it. So I'm going to put those aside. Hello, Lalasha. Okay, then I'm going to come back to my little strip here. Remember, we've been cutting out all of these skirt pieces. So we kind of have this like strip, and this is where I like to mess around with, you know, trying to get some bodice pieces out of here or some pockets. I'm still going to end up with a fair amount of this yardage left over. Maybe like a hair kerchief. So if you had a fabric that wasn't directional, you could, at this stage, you could actually fold your fabric up and, you know, cut out a bodice piece, right? But we can't do that because if I do that, I'm going to have one bodice that has upside down unicorns, okay? So I think I am going to snuggle a bodice in here and just do two. So cut one, flip it, and cut the other, and that way I'll have my front skirt and my front bodices cut out, okay? So, oh right, this has a tricky grain. I forgot about that. I might be doing the back. Yeah, I'm gonna do the back. So sorry about that. This has a weird grain line because of this. It's because of these pleats. The bodice is on an odd angle, so it's not quite appropriate for. It won't fit. Like I can't fit it actually. I could fit this over, but if I flip it, I can't fit that. So that's all right. I'm pretty used to watching my grain lines, so. Okay, so here, let's cut our backs. And I'm just lining up my little selvage edge here with this grain line right here. Okay, take your time. Oftentimes the back seam is a little curved, so don't use the back seam unless you know for sure it's straight. And this is such an elegant little dress. It's got these little darts in the front and these really pretty chevron tucks. And it's got this like sort of V back, like a deeper back. And we don't have to worry about any sleeve notches because it's sleeveless. Okay, so I've got everything cut. So before I get too goofy here, and there is a notch here on the side. You can cut it if you like. There's no point for me. Our dart legs, you want to cut at the base of those. Okay. And then we have a dart apex that we want to mark. So I like to do thread tacks. So I've got my needle and thread, okay? And I'm just going to stab right down into that apex and pull out. This is also a great time to use some tape so that that little bit of thread doesn't fall out later. You can also use like chalk or a disappearing ink. Let me show you. So that thread just sticks right in through there. Okay. Now I'm going to I can't use the same principle where I lay this fabric on top of this fabric to cut the second piece because I don't have a distinct grain line on this piece. So I'm going to use this again, but I'm going to be very careful to flip it. So I'm going to move. Okay. I bet some of you missed the music I used to listen to, but Facebook didn't like me playing music. Okay, so this is a little tricky, right? This is the piece we just cut out, and if I did this again, I would essentially be cutting two right-hand back bodices, so I need to flip it, okay? And again, there's this grain line right here. I like to sort of fold the pattern piece right on the grain line so I can see it, and make sure that that's lined up with the selvage. And bring it down. Now it's not something you can see very easily, but I can. But I want to line that up so that that straight grain line is lined up parallel to the selvage. And then, same thing. I'm going to cut this piece. Again, if you're not pretty accurate with your rotary cutter, please use pattern weights or pins, whatever you need to. I was bragging last month about how I've never cut myself. We all know where that's going to go. But today is not that day. If I have any good rotary technique, it's that I don't saw back and forth. I've talked about that. So again, the only marks that we care about on the back here is this dart and dart apex. So again, you cut your dart legs down here, just that 1/8 of an inch notch. And I actually still have a hole from when I, marked the first dart. So I'm just going to take my needle and thread, okay, and I'm going to stab right into that hole. I am super tired and I've already worked a lot today, and I just know I'm going to screw up something on camera, which is fine, except then I'll have to fix it, and I just don't need that. Okay, you see that? I have that tiny bit of orange selvage. That's how, so there's a good clue that I did it right. We have two symmetrical pieces. Okay. So there, we've got our back. And I'm going to put those aside. Okay. Awesome, awesome. So let's see where we're at with this yardage. And by the way, for all of my seems legit, I just highly advise that you buy extra yardage, because that didn't get ironed very well. I'm gonna iron this. I'll be right back. Because when you're learning, if you're just constantly trying to buy the cheapest thing, trying to conserve your fabric for whatever reason, it might distract you, you screw up, and now you don't have any yardage left. So when you're learning, you got to give yourself as much time and as much materials as you can afford. And I understand that sometimes buying 3 yards of fabric is possible, but 4 yards is a stretch for your budget. I get it. But that's just my advice. Okay, so now we've got to cut out the other large skirt pieces. Okay, so make sure I have nothing here on the table. And that, in my case, since I started with the front, I'm messing with the back. And remember, in my case, my unicorn's got to be straight up and down here. So this is going to take me a minute to get this all sorted out. Got these little fabric tails. Okay, so I've got it. Gonna kind of lay my ruler down here. So I'm just very persnicketedly lining up this grain. The better on grain you are, the better the garment hangs and wears. It is important. The only time that's not important is something that is felted, that just has absolutely no underlying structure. Okay, I have it lined up. it's now time for me to do my little super awesome rotary work. And as I've mentioned many times, you want to have all of your fabrics supported on the table, even if that means it's kind of folded up, because you do not want the fabric to pull off while you're cutting if that's happened, and it's super annoying. I can hear my music. I don't think you can hear it. Okay, so let's go ahead and cut our notches. Remember, 1/8 of an inch in, and we've got 9. And by the way, you guys, I'm a day late on making this video. I had committed to doing it on the 20th. And I hope that didn't inconvenience anyone. My schedule has been pretty intense lately. I need to find a crazy quilter expert, someone who knows how to make good stuff with the crazy quilt, because I want to make pot holders with some of my beautiful little scraps. Okay, so I've cut my notches here for all 9 pleat marks, and I've cut my 2 notches here for the pocket. So I'm actually going to move this aside, because remember, I can use my fabric piece because I know that this is on the straighter grain, so I don't need a paper pattern piece. I like to move my large and unwieldy pieces away. I hang them up. I had a huge project spread out here last night, and I did finish it and put it all away. I try to put everything away the night before, so when I get up in the morning, I have this like super tidy space. Works good. Okay. So again, we're going to be very careful here to make sure that we have our unicorns right side up, and that we have the center, so that's right here. This is the center back. You see a little bit of selvage in there, the orange selvage. We have the center on the grain line, and in this case, we have right sides together. Right side of the piece we cut up against the right side of the new fabric, and we're just going to take our time to get that grain correct, actually, and then supports all the fabric. If you can't really see the grain line, you can, measure with your ruler. I'm looking forward to the hems here. I get to show you guys my favorite baby hem technique. No, I don't, because I didn't tell you to buy the equipment for it. So, okay. So this is kind of a pain, but it's important. It's important to do this right. Oh my gosh. And of course, today I would be having some trouble. But thank goodness that it is cotton and it lines up. Okay, that's good. All right, so then I'll make sure I've got. Hello. Oh my God. No, I'm not even close. So yeah, just go ahead and eat. You can. Sorry, yes, keep making it, but don't wait for me. Okay, so I'm gonna cut out my skirt here. Yeah, you guys, I'm down here, this grueling tutorial, and there's like fresh homemade pizza upstairs. That's okay. So again, as soon as I've got the pattern piece cut out, so that's all 4 of my skirt pieces, a left front, right front, left back, right back. I'm gonna cut my little pocket notches here. And I'm going to cut all 9 of my pleats. Count them. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. That's my back, okay? My back pieces. So all we've got left is pockets, the front bodice, and those side, the sleeve bias facings, okay? Which, if we don't have room, so I can actually move my little cutting mat here. If we don't have room to cut out our front bodices in this little strip, this is where we're going to get our pockets or our side facings from. So let's see if we can use. So one method for conserving yardage is to kind of like cut the larger pieces first. It's funny, like the way I was trained, you kind of lay out every single pattern first, every pattern piece, and cut it all. And I just don't do that at all anymore, because a lot of times I'm making design adjustments on the fly. Like even if this pattern had your facings, I'm not using all of the facings. So, I change it up a lot. Okay, so let's see. Let me get my front bodice. So again, all that we've got left is the front bodice, 2 of those, 4 pockets, and our bias strips. So why do we have this goofy grain? Don't ask me. But it's pretty, you can see it's pretty severe, cut on the bias really. So I'm going to tuck it as close to, so actually that's funny, these unicorns are going to be galloping in a direction. That's okay. All right, so I'm going to square up my grain here. Pretty important. Okay, so you see there, all right, I got it. And sometimes that's when I like to sneak in. I'm like, do I have pocket room? I do. I'm gonna sneak in some pockets, okay? Oh, and I said that the pockets, I've got the pocket grain too. So fold your pocket grain piece. You're gonna, this is kind of like freestyle at this point. You've got to know that you got to get 2 of these and 4 of these, and that you've got to follow the grain lines. So you do not have to follow what I'm doing. This is actually nicely conserved. Oh, right. Do I care if my unicorns are upside down in my pocket, right? You know what? I'm going to be a rebel, and I am not going to care. No one will see the inside of that pocket. Except for the woman I'm making this dress for. She's scandalized that her unicorns are upside down. If she's watching, which... Okay, so I got 1 pocket out of that. Be careful, because pockets are, one-sided devices. So, you can see me kind of shifting stuff around to conserve my yardage a little. Okay, now, this has all those little interesting pleats. And I'm going to have us cut extremely precisely here. But don't bother marking anything about the pleats yet. We will mess with that when we get there. The pleats are not only pretty, but they provide room in the bust. So go ahead, and some of you who are, this might be well beyond what you can do with a rotary cutter. So in that case, just trace the shape. You can even use pen because it's not going to show. Trace the shape and then cut it with scissors or whatever to get super accurate, okay? So I've done one. Isn't that a cool shape? I love it. And I'm going to see if I can get some more pockets out of this little strip here. But again, this is all on you. Let's see if I can. Yeah, I'm going to just whip out some pockets. And again, you got to be careful because like I'm cutting this pocket wrong sides together, so this kind of makes a pocket pair, so to speak. You know what's funny is like I don't even use pockets in all the garments, but I don't feel comfortable if I don't have them. I made some yoga pants, jogger style, and I just so since this is a pair of pocket, whoops, this is a pair of pockets. I'm gonna put this aside because like I got one pair. And we're almost done actually. Like, what am I missing here? I guess we're gonna fuse interfacing, so we'll be here a minute. I'm not thinking just entirely about my pizza. Shut up. Yeah, so I'm going totally free for all. So while I'm staying on the cross grain or the lengthwise grain, I am not caring at all about the way that my unicorns face in my pockets. And that's just fine. Cross grain versus lengthwise grain, not that important. So since I only have one pocket piece, I'm going to keep it together with a paper piece for now. So if you've not, don't lose count. What I've got to get one more bodice. I've kept the bodice here so that I don't cut out two of the same side. And one more pocket and a bunch of bias strips. So now might be a good time to mess with those bias strips. Let me see if I can get the front bodice out of here. Okay. So we would want to put it, and I need to think about this, because what way are the unicorns going to be going? So, yeah, I don't think I have room here. Yeah, like the unicorns are going to be like galloping the same direction. But this is what I'm testing here. Yeah, okay. So this is probably not relevant to you guys, but I have to choose between if the unicorns are all galloping off to the, what would it be? To the left, or if they're galloping towards, like one's upside down and one's right side up. That's pretty interesting issue. Doesn't matter. So what I'm going to do though is I'm going to set this front bodice aside because I don't have enough room. And now we're going to cut our bias pieces so that we can line our arm side here. Okay, so you need to get your front and your back bodice piece together. We're going to do some measuring. Now is actually a really good time to like pause and have a drink of coffee or tea, water, and we'll just pause the video because I don't know, good spot. So bias binding is really nice for dresses. I've mentioned it before. So we're going to be measuring some seam lines here. I'm going to highlight them and bring them up close to the camera. And we're going to be cutting out strips. Okay, so armpit, armpit. We're going to measure those seam lines only, not the cutting lines. You're gonna go ahead and write it down on the pattern. So here's the back. So it's like 10 1/4 inch here. And this is for the front. This is about 9.5 inch. So multiply each of those by 2. So that means for the back, because there's 2 backs, we're going to have 20.5 inches. And for the front, we're going to have 19 inches. Okay. So that's a total of about 40 inches of strip that we need. So we're going to be a little safe, and we're going to try to cut about a 50-inch strip. Okay, 50 inches worth of strips. Okay. That's how long of a strip we're going to need. And we're just going to make a continuous strip. And then, oh, did I measure how wide I want it to be? I cannot remember. Let me see. I think I want 1.5 inches. Let me mess with that a little bit. Does anyone know the reason why? Yeah, 1.5 inches looks good. Let's see. Yeah, we'll go with 1.5 inches. 1.5 inches by 50 inches. That's the end strip length that we want. And I'd interrupted myself, but why are we cutting it on the bias? You quilters will know that, well, no, you won't. You literally won't. This bias strip needs to stretch smoothly around all of these like armpit curves. And if you cut it on the cross grain or the straight grain, that won't happen. It will not stretch. It'll look terrible. This bias finish that we're going to do, it might not look perfect the first time you do it, but that's okay because we're literally just getting introduced to the concept. Okay, so we're cutting at a perfect 45-degree angle. Okay? There's a million ways to figure out how to do that with this equipment. What I like to do is I like to lay the fabric right across my cutting table here. And then I use my ruler and I make sure it's bisecting all these little squares. Okay? So that makes a 45-degree angle. Okay? And again, remember I said I wanted 50 inches left? So this creates about, I don't know. Let me look. This creates about a 22-inch long strip. And so 2 of these aren't going to be enough, but 3 is definitely enough. So I'm just going to cut 3 1.5-inch strips right here. And I will have more than I need at that point. But it's super annoying to run out. So there's 1. Be really careful when you pull these apart because you don't want to shift your fabric. Here we go. 2. So now that we've cut out our bias strips, remember we have 1 pocket piece and 1 bodice left. Does this bias strip have to be perfect? Not really. By the way, I've seen those videos of doing like a tricky bias strip method, and I don't like it. I haven't used it. So there's my 3 strips. Let's just double check that I'm going to have enough, because I remember I said I wanted 50 inches. So that's, again, not counting the fact that we're going to have to seam this. That's like 23 inches plus 23. I will definitely have enough to do the arms. Okay. If I was doing the neck too, I would need more than 3 strips, but I'm not. So let's see if we can't get a bodice out of this, but we can get another pocket. Then we just have a bodice to cut, interfacing and facings to cut, and then we're done for the evening. Okay. So if you remember, I kept my pocket piece together so I can make sure to not accidentally cut two of the same, you know. And I'm being super willy-nilly, right? So I've got right sides together. I'm going to cut on that grain line. Yeah. So I'll have my 4 pocket pieces at this point. All right. Awesome. Here's my pocket piece. I have 4 now. So I can retire this paper piece. So this is I'm really digging this dress, and part of me just wants to sew it. It won't take us much longer to do the rest as it does what we're doing tonight. Okay, again, I don't have enough bodice here. This is going to be an interesting discussion here. And I'll tell you why. So remember, this is the last piece we're cutting out before we do our facings, which we're going to interface first. So again, I would be wanting to, you know, right sides together, and then I want to make sure that I'm on the right grain line. And that grain line is so goofy. So it'll be something like that, but what I just need to kind of consider is that when that's sewn together and opened up, the horses are running from, you know, right to left, and then they're going to keep running right to left. There is literally no way to make the horse pattern symmetrical like a chevron. It is not possible, because if you turn this, you're going to have horses galloping down. So I'm okay with that. It's just kind of one of those interesting like pattern issues. So in this case, because it's kind of hard to see the grain line, which by the way, you can always transfer your grain line onto your fabric for this exact like thing that we're trying to do here. But what I'm going to do is, because I now know that I'll be cutting out the correct side, I'm just going to take this aside and really make sure that that grain line is super duper. Okay, nice. Okay. And again, if you feel like you can't get these like incredibly accurate little pleats here, then trace this and cut out with scissors, okay? And remember, we don't need to do any markings here at this stage. We're not doing the markings for the pleats yet. We don't need a sleeve marking because there's no sleeves. I'm ignoring this side mark here, which, you know, could be for the side zipper, but we're not doing a side zipper. Make sure I've got nice, looking so pretty. I'll show you what I mean about that pattern, by the way. So we're all done with this fabric now, except for our piece that we cut out for facings. This is kind of cool. So here's one bodice, and here's the other. And you've got unicorns kind of running up, running down. It's pretty cool. All right, I am just tidying up my pattern pieces here. Like I said, I'm actually cutting out another one of these for a kit because she wanted me to do that work for her, which is kind of cool. Fronts. All right, so now what's next? Next should be me having a drink of water. I'm gonna fuse my fabric. So we're making that facing. And again, so standard sewing, the way I learned, you would be cutting out these little facing pieces, then you'd be cutting out little facing pieces in interfacing. But I tend to like block fusing a lot of the time. I honestly don't think it's that, for a dress like this, it is not that big of a deal which direction you go. So unless y'all are gonna put some money in my tip jar, I do not have a camera and lights on my press board, but that will come soon. But I'm over here getting some water, sticking it in my iron, and I'm going to show you the interfacing. And while we're at it, we'll go ahead and cut our little interfacing strips for our invisible zipper. You are going to be so excited with how good your invisible zipper looks. You're going to be feeling like the bomb. All right. So where did I put my interfacing? Oh, there it is. I need to buy more too. I've burned this stuff. Okay, so I've got the grain of my facing piece. So remember, this is big enough for me to cut out my two facings, the front facing and the back facing. So I just kind of lay my interfacing. Some interfacing has grain and some doesn't. This does. So I lay it out. Go ahead and flip it. Okay, great. And then I cut it around the shape because I'm going to use the iron here in just a second to fuse the heck out of it. And I use the sort of fabric itself as the press cloth. Okay. So you want to take your time when you fuse. You want to do it properly. You also want to buy good interfacing. I buy, I think it's called Fashion Sewing Supply. Pamela Ernie's interfacing. So I'm over here fusing. We have a microphone, my awesome iron. By the way, this is something you can politely ask your children to do, slash make them do. Can you guys hear that? Steaming the hell out of this. Do not ever put your iron directly on interfacing itself, because it kind of puts a nasty like coating on your iron face. So use a press cloth. Okay. I'm about halfway done. This is going to be just a beautiful dress, and I get to make it once. Thanks, Brandon. Whoops. Tried to comment, like hearing my voice. Okay. Almost done. You know, when I make stuff for people, I'm always listening to some kind of like just absolutely horrific, like murder, true crime. So if I ever make you something and you can just ask, say, what were you listening to while you made it? Sometimes it's something sweet, like a Buddhist book or something. Usually it's not. Usually it's something grisly, something I have to turn down if the kids are around. Okay, almost done. Okay, here we go. So here I am. You can really kind of see if your interfacing is fused. You can see if there's bubbles in there. Tell you a little secret though, even if there's a tiny, tiny bit where it's not fused, you can refuse it too. Refuse. Okay, so I was like super tight with this. I hope I have enough. That would just be classic if I didn't. It really would. Yeah. What was I thinking? Actually, I do have enough. I just got too tricky. I get tricky sometimes. Son of a gun. Went the wrong way. This is me being too frugal. All right. Almost. Okay, so here I am cutting out my front facing. That's this little dude. So remember, the front facing has to be cut on the fold. I will tell you, this is going to give such a beautiful finish. Okay, so go ahead and carefully set that aside after you cut it, because we have to mark the center pretty accurately. So give yourself a second there. I swear to, okay. Okay, so that's my front facing over there. My back facing that I like swear I almost didn't give myself enough room for. Remember, the back facing, I'm not cutting it on the fold. So instead of that little line going right to the edge, I'm actually going to cut it in two. Because if you cut it on the fold, you would not have a zipper opening at the top center back. Almost done. Gonna run upstairs, eat some pizza, watch some Swamp Thing. Friday nights are Swamp Thing nights. Okay. I like to keep my facings like pinned, actually, the paper. Cool. You guys have like kind of a lot of fabric left. Not enough to make a dress, of course, but so before we move on from the facings, and we're going to cut our inner facings, and we're going to recap. What was I going to say? I don't remember. Oh yeah, we've got to clip this little center front. Okay, look at this. This is so pretty, you guys. This is the neckline. Look at how nice that's going to look. It's going to look great. You don't really need to clip the bottom of the facing, but you do need to clip here. And we're actually going to cut a lot further, but for now we'll just do that 1/8 of an inch, okay? The only thing we haven't really marked are some of the pleat markings, but we don't need to yet. So I'm going to go ahead and pin my two facings. I'm actually going to pin them on the bottom. Okay. Beautiful. Absolutely beautiful. Okay. And the last thing we'll do is our interfacing strips for the invisible zipper. Now remember I told you to get an 18-inch invisible zipper? So we're just going to cut, I'm going to say like 1/2 of an inch wide. You could go a little bit wider. Let's be bold and do like 5/8, okay? So I'm going to use the same interfacing. It doesn't matter very much if you're making a cotton dress. Most light to mid-weight interfacings are fine. Like you want kind of a lightweight if you're making a super lightweight dress. So again, I had said an 18-inch zipper. So we need about 36 inches of strips of interfacing. So I've got about a 12-inch strip here, so I'm going to cut 4 of them to make sure I have enough, okay? So I am cutting along the grain of this interfacing, okay? And it's okay that it's not continuous strips. That's okay. In fact, this is a good way to use, scrap. So I'd said 5/8 of an inch. So I'm going to cut 4 of them. 1. I can't believe how hungry I am, guys. But this had to be done today. 2, 3, 4. Okay. So let's recap what we've done today, all right? Put my little put away a couple of my supplies. I've got to get my model to come over and model this sheer dress because I'm going to sell it. Okay. So we have cut everything we need, and we have marked everything except for those front chevron pleats. So we've got, let's start from the top. We've got our 2 front bodice pieces, and we've got our 2 back bodice pieces. We have perfectly accurate pleats cut here. We have our back with our dart apex and our dart legs. Dart legs are clipped 1/4 of an inch in, dart apex. That's all of our bodice. This weighs nothing. This is going to be a gorgeously light dress. We have our skirt fronts that we have marked with safety pins on both so that we don't get confused. We have created a center front seam because we were not able to cut on the fold because our fabric was not wide enough. Everything is right sides up, and we have clipped both our pocket clips just 1/4 of an inch in, and then all 9 of our little pleat folds, okay? Similarly, we have our skirt back. This is just going to be a beautiful dress. I'm asking why I didn't. Same here for the back, exactly the same as the front. We have created a center back seam, which again, the pattern originally had a side zipper, which is why there were no seams in the front or the back center of the skirt. But we are going to do a back invisible zipper. So we have a seam here in the center back. We have also marked our pleats, our 9 pleat locations, just 1/4 of an inch in, and we have marked our pocket, 1/4 of an inch in, our 2 pocket placements, okay? In addition, okay, stacking these nicely here. This is going to be beautiful. In addition, we have our 4 pocket pieces. I always call these like kidney shaped. Okay. And I was, goofy, and I didn't care what direction anything faced, but I did care that the pockets were cut on either the lengthwise or the crosswise grain. That mattered. We block fused, we created our facing pieces, just like we created our pocket pieces, and we block fused, and we've got a back facing. There's 2 separate pieces for the back facing, all fused, and our 1 gorgeous front facing piece. And we finally have our bias facing strips that we're going to be using for our arm side, okay? And we have our interfacing strips that we're going to be using for our invisible zipper. So when we come back, we're going to need that zipper and, you know, thread and all of that, but that's it. And we will be off and running. So that's a week from today at 12 noon PST. I can't think of anything else that we need to go over, actually. But if you have any questions, please talk to me so that we're ready. We're ready on Friday. Okay. So I'm going to exit and get myself some well-deserved pizza, and I'll come back here later and tidy up. Although I was pretty much tidying up as I went, so I just have a little bit of fabric to fold. And I want to thank anyone who is watching now. I mean, I've got a couple friends watching, but anyone who watches later who wants to sew, contact me if you're having any trouble whatsoever. And otherwise, I'll see you next Friday at noon PST. So have an awesome, safe, joyous weekend. And we will see you next Friday.